Here's a good afternoon to each and every one of you. I hope you can hear me or see me. If so, could someone please let me know?
Yeah, we can hear you and see you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So here's another good afternoon to each and every one of you. Pleasure to be here. My name is Amir, and I'll be talking about fillers and energizers today in this half an hour session. I'm actually currently working as an educational consultant and a trainer with Unlimited Educational Services. And I hope in the next half an hour, we'll be able to share some interesting thoughts together, some thoughts and ideas that you can actually take directly into your next class and practice with your students, regardless of what level you're teaching, from very young learners in KG all the way up to high school, and even if you're teaching adults. So you've also got my email address. This is for when you want to have some further conversation, or if you've got any questions at the end of the session, you can always stay in touch with me. So just as we always have our online lessons, and you probably know this better than me, some very basic rules to lay before we actually begin. I'd like all of you to have a piece of paper and a pen ready, just in case if there is an interesting idea that you want to take note of, or if there's something that you want to, well, take note and check with me later on. I'd also appreciate it if you can be patient in case something goes wrong with my connection, because obviously these days, anything could go wrong with the internet. And finally, feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions at any moment. I wouldn't mind. So just turn on your microphone or use the chat box to ask me your questions. So, well, the title of the session is Fillers and Energizers. And I understand the reason why you are here in this session today is to get some ideas on how you can actually, well, motivate your students a little bit more, give them more reasons to want to participate in classroom activities, and of course, fill in the gap between two lessons that you have, because obviously those moments are golden moments when we can actually, someone's microphone is on, someone who's apparently frustrated. I'd appreciate if you can keep them off for now. So we'd be looking at how we can actually fill those gaps and give our students the reason to want to continue with the next lesson or to feel more engaged in the classroom. So I'm going to ask you, well, we actually had a sound effect now just a few seconds ago from one of the participants to give us this, well, picture. You can imagine that you've got faces like this in your classes almost all of the time, regardless of what level or what type of teaching we're talking about. It can be online education. Faces like this are always there. And then also, even if you're teaching face to face, you always see faces like this. And I think this is one reason why we also as teachers start feeling bored and we kind of lose what we're doing. So it's a good idea to keep the class engaged, to keep the class energized, so that you would encounter faces like this less often. Now, obviously, it's impossible to eradicate this. As we know, we're dealing with Generation Z students. They always have a reason to want to get bored or not be interested in a lesson. So obviously, all we're trying to do right now over here is to try to, well, decrease the number of these faces in our classes. And hopefully the ideas I'll be sharing with you are going to help you with that. We're dealing with young learners. And I think most of you are familiar with the concept of Generation Z. We always repeat this when we have training sessions with teachers as the age group we're dealing with now, kids that were born after, say, 1995, and then all the way up to 2012 or 13 are regarded as Generation Z students. And they have certain set of expectations and styles of learning. And so as teachers, we have to be aware of those. And if we're not, then I think we're going to lose them all. Now, one of the most important features of this generation is the fact that they've got a really short attention span. And when I say really short, I'm talking about 8 to 12 seconds. And that's just horrible. Imagine every 8 to 10 or 12 seconds, you kind of lose your students' well, attention, and then they start daydreaming and they start thinking about various other things outside the classroom. whether they're sitting in an online lesson or in a face-to-face lesson. So obviously, it is our job to bring them back every few seconds or every few minutes. Actually, according to some research now, the way the brain works is quite interesting. Brain has this automatic system of operation, and it's really not up to what we're doing in the class or what we're teaching or how interesting the lesson is. Apparently, the brain can stay focused. Now, when I say focused, I mean listen to the teacher, keep learning, read something, listen to something. So all the classroom activities for only up to 20 minutes. And that means after 20 minutes, there has to be a break. If there's no break, then obviously there wouldn't be a next focus level. So if you want your students to focus on what you're teaching them, and if you want them to listen to what you're saying in the class, you need to follow this pattern. And it's always like this: focus for 20 minutes, or well, in some classes less than that, and then break. Focus again, and then break. So, and again, in this session, we'll try to cover this break time. I'm not talking about the break where after 40 minutes, you have like 10 minutes of break. We're not talking about that kind of break. We're talking about a break in your lesson, actually. So we're going to see how we can use energizers, boosters, and breathers to help your students have a short break, refresh, recharge, and then prepare themselves for the next focus level. Again, before I start introducing the activities, I'd like to mention a few important facts about who we are dealing with in our classes. You've probably seen this photo online before, but it's an interesting illustration of an idiom, of a famous idiom that there is out there. Different folks, different strokes. You might have heard of this. And that is a really fundamental rule when it comes to energizing our classes. So rule number one, when it comes to energizing your students, is every student has a different way of being energized. So you cannot apply one certain rule all the time and expect your students to feel excited, to feel energized, to feel motivated and engaged. So obviously you'll have to try different things for different students. So it's a really good idea to have a few activities in your pocket all the time. And when you walk into a class, to deal with different types of students in different ways. Or maybe if you use activity number one with your students now, 20 minutes later, use activity number two, and then tomorrow use activity number three. So it's really sensible to have a few of these activities in your pocket ready to be used, and that means it has to be different type. Obviously, for a lot of teachers, energy, excitement are a bit of scary words, because for a lot of people, energy equals sound, shouting and yelling. But no, I believe that's not the fact. I still feel that we can energize our class. We can excite our students without making them shout or yell or run around the class and make a mess. So obviously, someone can be excited, someone can be energized, even without showing those, those features of yelling and shouting. So let's not mistake these two. And finally, I think it's important to understand that we don't have like 0-1 dichotomy here. It's not energized, bored at all. It's always a continuum. So one student can be 60% energized, one student can be 20% bored, another student can be 100% energized, and another can be 0% bored. So the point is, we're looking at a continuum over here. And so you'll have to try to take the level of energy in your classes to as a high level as possible. And I think that's when success happens in our classes as a teacher, when we're teaching something. So I think considering these three important rules in mind, we're now ready to walk into the quick fire activities, and I can show you how you can actually help your students become energized. So the very first activity I have to introduce is called wrong name. And well, it looks easy when you first think about it, or it even looks and sounds easy when you think about it. But when it comes to the actual practice of the activity of wrong name, it becomes a real challenge. And I understand how much fun it can bring into your lessons and how much energy it can create within your students, even without walking around, running around, shouting and everything. So what is the idea? You would use an object. If you're teaching online, anything at your disposal, anything like about this or anything like this. something that you can just grab quickly and show to your students, or teach your students to do this. We can also show a picture. I'm going to use a picture actually to practice this with you if possible. Then obviously give your students a few seconds of thinking about that object you're showing them. But here's the interesting part. They are not supposed to tell you what that object is. So when you show this, if you notice I didn't say what it was, don't say what it is. Instead, ask your students to call it anything but what it actually is. So, well, this is a watch, and it's a taboo word, the word that we cannot use to describe it. So what is this? You'll have to think of, say, 5 words. If you want to make it real challenge, 10 words. I usually use number 7 because it's like a magic number. Tell your students you have now like 30 seconds to call this thing 7 things, but not watch. Now, as I said, it might sound a bit easy at first, but when it comes to the actual practice, it gets difficult. Let's try this together. I know it's not probably very convenient for you to turn on your microphones, but I'm just going to show a picture anyway. And all I want you to do is to look at that picture for like 5 seconds and start giving it 7 names. Let me give you the example. Okay, elephant, car, tie, light, phone, street, dinosaur. So these are the 7 words that came to my mind to name this thing, but obviously wrong name. Now, it's going to be your turn. Feel free to take the microphone or use the chat box, or just think about it in your own heads. See how fast you can actually give names to the object that I'm about to show you right now. Let's go. By the way, this
fly.
Okay.
Okay. A bird, fly, hammer, house, clean, and mop, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Could you go with 2 more?
Okay. Green and holding.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Dilara Hojam. That was nice. So you can make this more difficult by limiting the type of words that your students can make. For example, only nouns, only adjectives, only, I don't know, ing words, for example. It's up to you, really. By the way, this thing is a spider catcher. You might be interested in something like, because some people are scared of spider catchers. So there's actually a market that sells spider catchers, and you can, I'm not promoting that, by the way, just an idea online. Or this one. Now, again, please think about this. See what words you can use. Only nouns now, no verbs, no adjectives, only nouns to describe this, to talk about this. 7 of those.
I can.
Yeah, yes, Hojam.
Okay. White, sofa, wheel, light, I don't know, seatbelt, brand, and the last one, I don't know, holder, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's
Okay.
good. That's good. See, that's the point. It looks quite easy in the beginning, but as you say the words, you seem to be like running out of ideas. It's not the fact that you don't know many words. It's the fact that the brain is really challenged with this. This is based on some philosophy, some kind of psychology, actually. When you keep repeating random words, your brain runs out of ideas. And this is a really good way of energizing your students, giving them the reason to be excited, and of course, leading them to the next lesson. So let's call this wrong name and then move on to the next one. Oh, this is not part of this session. It's just the question there. Could you just tell me the answer? Read the question and then put the answer in the chat box, or just say it out loud.
Can I say something?
Yes,
it's
sure.
not Moses, because I think in this story it was Noah.
Yeah, that's right. You got it. You got it. Thank you. Thank you. Now, that was smart, because for a lot of people, the answer is 2. The first thing that they think of is number 2, because, well, we read the first bit of the question, how many animals of each kind did not Moses, but Noah take on the ark? That's right. This is called linguistic, I can't remember the name really, to be honest, but it's kind of illusion, mental illusion. that questions create. And another interesting idea that you can try with your students, ask them any question, but with a fixed and easy beginning, but obviously changed and wrong ending. And then you would notice that all your students are looking at the first bit of the question, and then they answer without even thinking. As I said, most people would say number 2, but it doesn't mean that you're not smart, but obviously this is the way brain tricks us. So I think we can use this technique to teach our students that, hey, before you answer something, think twice. All right, moving on now. As I said, this is not really an activity, just an idea. Moving on, here's another thing I do with my students. Obviously, I had in mind to practice this with you, but because it might take some time, I'm just going to give you the idea. You can try it with your students. Now, take any picture from any course book that you have as the first, or as a pre-lesson activity, or as a warm-up activity, or as a revision activity to your previous lessons. Take any picture. Now, it can be from the book, or it can be an online picture. And you can do this on Zoom or face-to-face, because I've tried this with all sorts of students. Now, give your students some time to look at the picture. So like 5 seconds, 10 seconds, depending on how complicated the picture is, or depending on who your students are. And then tell them that you're going to take the picture off and ask them a question. Please think about the answer to the question that I'm about to show you. I think you've had enough time to look at this picture. So there was a ruler in the picture. What color do you think it was? Now, don't tell me there wasn't a ruler. There was definitely a ruler, but what color it was is the question that you can ask your students. It was yellow, by the way. I'm just going to skip because I don't want to spend too much time here. So if you look at the ruler, it's yellow. There's another question I can ask now. How many children are there? So you see different types of questions. How many questions, what color questions, where questions, depending on what you have actually taught your students, you can ask the appropriate question. Children love this activity. I've tried this with KG students, with grade 1 students, and with adults, with teachers as well. And everybody seems to be excited about trying to remember the details of the picture and then making a very wild guess. And so this would bring energy into your classroom, obviously. So there are 11 children in this picture. Where's the bag? The third, fourth question are usually answered quite easily because people now remember more details. The bag is over here next to the table. And the final question, how's the weather today? I think you all now know the answer. It's quite sunny. So the same thing you can do with your students, as I said. Choose any picture, it really doesn't matter, and ask 3, 4, 5 questions. But every time, make sure that your students get to see the picture again, because well, we're not here to scare them. We're not here to let them know that they don't know the answers. I think it's even a good idea to ask them easy questions so they can answer and feel good about themselves, even for very weak students, I should say. Okay, moving on now. Here's another energizer. It can be a bit messy and well, full of sound sometimes in your classes, but still, I think it's worth trying. As well, you have to really be prepared for this one. You have to get some sort of story in your mind. You have to have some sort of text, a reading or something. And then, obviously, assign a word or a set of words, depending on who you're teaching and what you're teaching, to each and every student. So like, John, you have the word, I don't know, every day. Mary, you have the word car. From the text, of course, you're choosing these words from the text. So each student now has a word or a set of words. And then start telling that story or read that story or just play the recording. And every time each student hears their word, they have to stand up. Or they can do a variety of other things, like raise their right hand, raise their left hand. I don't know, look around, say something, do something. It's really up to you how you want them to respond to that stimulus. But obviously, what is important here is that your students will be listening very carefully to this. And that means their listening comprehension is improving, their vocab detection skill is being improved, and of course, their scanning skills are improved, as well as being energized really and getting ready to learn the next lesson. What I try is sometimes to give holistic actions to the whole class. So for example, I say, you've probably been to one of my sessions before where I tell a camel story. So you tell your students, clap your hands if you hear the word mother, and the whole class claps their hand when they hear the word mother, for example. This is adding a lot to your class, I promise. It's also making your students interested in the reading passages or the stories that you have to tell them. So it's killing many birds, not just two with one stone. All right, allow me to move on. Find a unique answer. Again, I try this with higher level students in secondary and high school and with adult students. And I think there are many values to this. Other than the sense of competition that you're going to encourage here, you're also going to dig deep in your students' knowledge base and see how much they really know and how much they're really ready to think about the things that they know. So the basic idea here is to ask a question, any question, but I would prefer more language-related questions, like questions about verbs, about adjectives, about nouns, and those types of questions. But again, you can make your own questions. And when you ask that question, you give every team in your class or every individual student some time to come up with as many answers as possible, but they should think of something unique, as the name suggests, find a unique answer. So for example, I say, give me an action verb. And then everybody says, go, walk, touch, say. Now, okay, these are very mainstream action verbs. I need something more unique. And you pick the most unique answer as the top answer. Maybe praise that student, give them a positive point, give them a sticker, whatever that you do to praise your students. Now, let's take a look at some examples I have for you. Give me irregular past forms with 3 letters. Now, everybody would say cut, put. What else do we have? You know, some common ones, but is there some kind of verb that no one would be able to come up with? If so, and if you give it to me, you're going to win a positive actually over here. Feel free to share if you have something. Let me just show you some more. Irregular plurals like knife, knives, like wolf, wolves, man, men. These are very mainstream. Everybody knows these. Give me something that nobody has ever thought of, for example. Or some adjectives that end in Y. Adjectives beginning with un, again, a lot of people know unbelievable, unreal, and so on. Verbs beginning with re. And a lot of people always go with repeat, which is not the right answer, by the way, because it's not like re being repeated. So prepositions with 4 letters, a lot of people say from, into, but well, there are some students who always come up with better answers, more unique answers. This would help your students sit in the same spot and obviously think a lot. And that deep level thinking is going to energize them, is going to excite them, is going to make them want to learn the next lesson. Moving on, another one that I really like, and it always also gives a lot of laugh in the class as well, is the activity that is called Distract Your Brain. It's got thousands of forms. I have some small suggestions to make over here, like count backwards from 100. Try this with your primary students. They love this. So if it's higher level, secondary, ask them to count backwards from 1,000, for example. So they start 100, 97, 90, 90, see my math is bad, 94, and it goes down until, well, you don't have to wait for 0. You can stop them somewhere after 1 or 2 minutes. You can ask each student to say one number, for example, but this counting backwards, you have no idea what kind of miraculous activity it is to the brain. The brain's, it's like your car is moving at 100 kilometers per hour on the highway, and then you suddenly go on the rear gear, actually. So the brain suddenly stops working forward and it has to start working backward. It's a great challenge to the brain, but obviously refreshes that, recharges that, and keeps it alert. So try this. Or say the alphabet backwards. Now, we all know A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but we have hardly ever tried X, Y, Z, Z, Y, X backwards. And I think the brain really stops working for a few seconds there. But this challenge is quite exciting. Read upside down. I really like this one. But you're not allowed to move your head. So you have to adjust your eyes to read that. So let me give you an example. Please try to read this text on the right in red. It starts here, by the way. And don't move your heads.
Can I read aloud?
Yes, yes, sure, Dilara Hocam, try that.
Man vocabulary is recognized,
Yeah,
yes, recognized after 7 o- o-
occurrences.
occurrences and used all only used only after 20 occurrences. Yes,
Occurrences.
occurrences. Yes,
Very good.
occurrences. Yeah.
Very good. You got it. Brilliant. Good
It was
job.
hard.
It is actually is difficult. Well, obviously there is also a message over here in this Paul Nations Code where new vocabulary is recognized after 7 times of occurrence and used only after 20 times of occurrence. The idea here is that if you're teaching a word to your students, don't expect them to remember that the first time that you teach it. They should see that word or they should come across that word 7 times to passively remember the meaning. And if you expect them to use that word in their daily conversations, they should see that word 20 times. So I think this is also, the sentence is not just there to distract your brain, but is also there to give you some information about how patient you should be when you're teaching vocabulary to your students. So try stuff like this. If you have a text, for example, that you have covered in the lesson, it's quite easy to put it on the slide and just make it upside down and then ask your students to read it. There's a lot of fun into it and the brain is really challenged for that activity. Another one I really like, I really enjoy this activity with my students because it's a lot of fun. You might have heard of this alphabet scramble. You might have done this with your students. It's quite a challenge, I should say. It looks easy, but it is a real challenge. Now we've got the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, up to X, Y, Z. I don't know where Z is, but that's not important. And then you see some letters, including R, L, T beneath each letter. So we have A, L, B, R, C, T. Now, L stands for left hand, R stands for right hand, and T stands for together, both hands. So when I'm saying the letter A, I should also raise my left hand. When I say B, I should raise my right hand. When I say C, I should use both my hands. When I say D, again together, E, left, F, G, H, I. So you see, but you have to do it fast. And then you can have your students in pairs together. One of them can do this, read the letters and do the activity. And then the other one should control to see if the student is doing it well or not. It's a really fun activity. I promise you're gonna have like 5, 6, 7, up to 10 minutes of fun in your class, and everybody's focused on this activity because there's a lot that needs to happen in the brain to do this successfully. If you find that your learners are smart and they're doing this fast with no problems, ask them to switch. For example, read like this, A, F, K, P, U, go down like this, or go backwards from Z to A. You can change the challenge and make sure that it's a lot of fun for your students. Okay, moving on. Another question, could you just read this and tell me the answer if you can guess, or just think about the answer?
Their home countries?
Good guess, but no.
Survivors
speak
are not buried, actually.
Thank you. Yes, that's right. You don't bury the survivors. They are lucky enough to stay alive. So why do you bury them, Hocam? So that's the point. Again, with the illusion, with the mental illusion, we always look at the first bit of the question and we forget to look at the second bit of the question. And this is, again, another interesting way of making your students think about the questions in more depth. Final tips over here. If you want to make sure that you are energizing your students, you are keeping them constantly engaged with the lesson, KISS everything that you're doing in your lesson. Now, KISS is a very interesting abbreviation in ELT. It's a short form of keep it short and simple. So it doesn't mean actually KISS your instructions, but it means keep them short and structured. I'm just coming to an end, by the way, just one more minute. Laughter is a huge asset in your lessons. If there's an opportunity, make sure that you're laughing in your classes or you make your students laugh. Laughing makes the brain work faster, more efficiently, and makes a lot of muscles feel more relaxed. Try that. Use breathing. I don't know if you were in Ali's mindfulness session, but he probably talked about breathing as well. Such a great idea when it comes to energizing your students. Stay supportive, use positive words all the time because they also encourage people. And finally, yes, do use mindfulness activities because they always help your students feel more energetic. I think you guys were amazing today. Thank you for sharing all the answers and everything. My email is here in case you have any further questions about the session. So thank you very much for being here today. It was a pleasure working with you guys.
Thank you. Thank
take care.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.